Welcome back. And just before we begin sports, let's quickly look at the economy. And Professor Ken Ife joins us to examine the 2026 budget proposal presented by President Bola Tinubu just last week. Professor Ken Ife, thank you for joining us on the program.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yes, it's good to have you again. But before we begin to look at the parameters as against the realities of those parameters ahead of next year, let's look at what is very critical. And President Tinubu acknowledged the concern over the continuing rollover of budgets. And, this is the reality as captured in one of the reports. This extends the budgetary carryovers begun in 2023, as only 20% of the capital components of 2025 budget have been released as at August 2025. And so we have 2023 supplementary budget, 2024 and 2025 budgets still running, and we have now had a presentation of 2026 budget. Surely this is chaotic. Professor Ife, how does this rollover of 3 budgets impact on 2026 appropriation bill?
See, look, Federal Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, they owe profound apology to the president. And whoever supervises the budget directorate also owes strong apology to the government. Tinubu doesn't need this nonsense. He doesn't need it entering into an election year. Just look at all the things he has achieved. All of them were done clean. Is there anything on the central bank arena that is not clean and clear, visible? Why bring politics into budget and planning and then, showing influence over National Assembly? In fact, they owe apologies to National Assembly because National Assembly does not originate budget. Budget is originated by budget and planning and then taken all the way through. Now, let me give you one thing. This is done without regard to fiscal law that controls budget. We have FRA 2007, a law that actually tells you what to do. 4 months before the budget year, you begin your process. I mean, every year I speak to this conference of all the people all over the country, these budget officers and accounting officers. I speak to them. It's a presentation. So we talk about this. It begins at least 4 months before the period. Now, secondly, this has taken us 10 years back. It has taken this thing they're doing has taken us 10 years back. Throughout the period of Ben Akabwe, we had discipline. You see, budget and planning is a professional disciplined area where you do what the law says you should do. But everything done here, we are done outside the rules of the law, after the ambit of the law. You have to have budget appraisal, performance review. Where is the performance review? We're looking for this. How can you move into a new budget without having performance review of the previous budget? And then you come into the budget, but when you do fiscal strategy paper, there are things that are common sense. You cannot go and take a price that is above a price benchmark that is above the predicted prices of who do you predict? We usually use American Energy Information Agency and their orders anyway. What have they projected? They projected at the end of this year, the price of the crude will be $68. But going into next year, first quarter, it will be 52. The second quarter, 54, third quarter, 54, 58. That is where it's going to rest. And then you see Senate coming and saying to you, please, let's use $60 benchmark, which is even reasonable, but they've hacked it up to 64.5. Now, normally, in budget balance, you prepare budget benchmark below the projected prices of the crude over the next 3 years. And the reason of putting it there is to have a headroom between the budget benchmark and the actual price. That headroom enables you to have accretion to excess crude account, and then from there, accretion to reserves. From the reserve, you defend the currency. But this is completely thrown out. People are just intuitively putting any figure that they like. There's no basis for what they are doing. I'm telling you, then you come to debt. You just, according to the Nigerian fiscal position, which is really beautiful today, you have trade, positive balance of trade, over 6.6 trillion. You have positive balance of payment over $5.8 billion. You have all those. Anything, look at the debt service ratio, all favorable. You can borrow more. But borrow within the book and stop embarrassing the president going into an election. You are just creating Achilles heel for the president to be attacked in going into an election. You don't need all this. Follow the law. The law says, okay, you want to borrow how many billions? 15 billion Japanese yen, $21.5 billion dollars. Follow the law. You will still borrow all that money, but follow the law. And I remember that on many of your programs, I have always said, don't borrow money to pay out. So go and use your own internally generated revenue to distribute.
Yeah, and you're right, Professor Ife. This touches on fiscal discipline. This year, we've seen contractors protest non-payment at the National Assembly. We've heard Mr. President lament the owing of 1.5 trillion naira contractors to contractors. We've heard the National Assembly talk about the non-remittance of trillions of naira to the Federation account by the CBN. We've had all those issues. But what we've also heard from the Minister of Finance is that concerns about funding is attributed to revenue shortfall. But Professor Ife, what we've also heard is that the FIRS has surpassed its target by trillions of naira, making cumulatively about 46 trillion naira in 2 years.
But that doesn't happen to be the case.
Yes, so how should we be processing the explanation by the Minister of Finance that, lack of funding for the 2025 budget is as a result of revenue shortfall when we're recording customs exceeding its target, FIRS exceeding their target?
No, you see, it doesn't add up. And let me tell you why it doesn't add up. First of all, at the heart of it is indiscipline in the budgeting process. You have ended up over-bloating the budget. How did you over-bloat the budget? One, the budget benchmark was totally unrealistic. You couldn't go to $75 when you are going to be selling crude at $65. You can't do that. Now, when you do that, and then you have a production volume of 2 million per barrel when you are doing 1.4, that is recklessness. Because when you multiply that 2 by $75, you land at a bogus figure. And what does it tell you? One, you go and exceed the law on deficit. That deficit to GDP ratio, you've exceeded that. That's the law. Number two, when you create a bogus budget now, you have given incentive to anything and everything to happen in the Ministry of Finance and all that stuff and the National Assembly. You have created that confusion. That is the rules of the confusion. But there are two damages that you are going to do. One, you are going to borrow more than you would require. And then, unfortunately, the borrowing has been domestic borrowing, which is very expensive. When you are doing domestic borrowing at 18%, you are crowding out private sector investment because they are going to be rushing in to buy those treasury bills. In addition to the fact that the CBN has withdrawn from domestic finance intervention, manufacturers are suffering. Now you are pulling off the remaining money from them to go and buy treasury bill. You're killing the economy. Then second is you should go to multilateral loans. Now the second point is you are actually refusing to fund projects. Because what you are doing here is that if you look at the pecking order, the payment pecking order, number one is first line charges. Loan is paid. Debt service, you pay that debt service. Two, you pay salaries. If you don't pay salaries, workers are on the street. Then maybe you pay for defense. Otherwise, they will kidnap more people and all that. You pay for defense. By the time you did those ones, you haven't got any money to pay capital. Then you will be achieving, by December, you've achieved almost 100% on the current expenditure. And then you have only less than 10% on capital. Then you move it to March. Then March to June, from June to December. That is the force of it is the poor budgeting discipline. That is the root cause. And because you have bloated the budget, everybody is now prioritizing. You see from AAGF office, from presidency, everybody, they're all because there is a crash. Everybody is looking for money when the money is not there. That is the cause of it. Then you now start bringing other things. I know there's issue about who exactly is now supervising the budget office, and then are you reconciling the waivers with the budget provision? There are many things there, but the root of it is budget indiscipline. And that's what we need to tackle. You don't need this nonsense. If the budget is for 40, okay, from what the senators have proposed, if you are using the price benchmark of $60 that they propose, our aggregate revenue would be about 34.33 billion. But they've shifted it now. They said what they've agreed is 64.85, which is giving us an aggregate revenue of total expenditure of 58.18 trillion. Now, that figure is not going to stand. You cannot be doing 64. They are doing 64.85 because they are looking at the projected price this quarter of $68. But what happens next quarter? Next quarter is dropping to $52, $54, $58. So why are you doing this?
And that's a very...
You should be putting the budget looking forward from what the EIA has told you. You go down to 50.
Yeah.
Go down to 50. What is wrong in being below the budget line? After 6 months, you can review your budget after 6 months, and then take it up.
Yeah,
but
Prof.
Why are you doing this?
Prof, and that's a stark reality, because if crude oil price is going to drop, is the federal government going to achieve its expected revenue target of 34 trillion naira? And you've been hammering on fiscal discipline. So shall we now begin to question the expertise of our budget planners at the Ministry of Budget and the Ministry of Finance? But very quickly, what is also equally important... Let me just land on this one. Let me land on this one. Talk to us about the sectoral allocation and, of course, the what has been allocated to, the 2026 capital component of the budget as against what we had in 2025.
The thing is this. What they have allocated is a combination, because what I've done, that 70% unspent capital budget is now added to the capital budget of 2020. So what you now have is a figure of 26.08 trillion, which is about 50% or something. But it is a combination of 2 years of capital budget, and you're still not going to spend that money. Because in the end of the day, what we are doing, that we are crowding out private sector investment with excessive loan, and then the people are so low in the pecking order that they don't even get a look in. And in the end of the day, you create a scramble, and then people are now protesting, who knows who, your own will drop. And then you see, that is what is going on. And that's why people, contractors are angry and going and marching out there and carrying coffin. You should stop that. It's budget indiscipline. If you get the correct people there to do the job, this thing has been done 10 years back. You are moving this country 10 years back. Tinubu doesn't need all this. Going into an election year, this guy has done tremendously well in all other areas. Now this budget is becoming his Achilles heel. And is preventable, is avoidable.
You know, Professor Ife, if he has done tremendously well, we also have to process it through the eyes, or if you like, the results of those he has hired to manage the nation's finances. So doing tremendously well is relative. Professor Ife, we must answer.
I agree with you, but I said in some areas, you can't fault him on monetary policy. Right. You can't fault him on PIA implementation. You have to recognize that there are seismic shift in many sectors of our economy, but this budget and planning nonsense is not on.
All right.
It doesn't deserve this embarrassment.
All right. We must anchor at this point, and thank you very much for coming through, for bringing your expertise and insights to this critical conversation. Professor Ken Ife is an economist who has joined us on this one.
Thank you.